Imagine a blank white screen and a single stick man standing there looking a bit lonely. That is basically the beginning of human history. For a long time, we were just roaming around trying not to get eaten by things with much larger teeth than ours. But then something happened. We started walking on 2 feet and our brains started getting bigger, which sounds great until you realize it made human babies basically useless for the first few years of their lives. A baby gazelle can walk in an hour, but a human baby can't even hold its own head up. This created a massive problem for our ancestors. A single parent trying to gather food while holding a floppy human infant is a recipe for a very short family tree. So nature came up with a solution called pair bonding. This wasn't marriage yet. It was just a biological survival hack. It was two people looking at each other and saying, "I will help you keep this tiny loud human alive if you help me find some berries." But as we moved from caves into huts and eventually into actual cities, things got complicated. Around 10,000 years ago, we invented farming, and suddenly we had stuff. We had land and grain and very important goats. This is where marriage as we know it was born. It wasn't about a spark or a soulmate. It was a property merger. If you had the land and I had the goats, we didn't just want to be neighbors, we wanted to be a corporation. Marriage became a way to make sure your goats stayed in your family and that everyone knew exactly who was going to inherit the farm when you eventually kicked the bucket. It was basically the original terms and conditions agreement. You didn't even have to like the person. You just had to agree that their family's land was a good strategic acquisition. In fact, for most of human history, if you told your parents you wanted to marry for love, they would have laughed at you. They would have said, "That's nice, but can your love pull a plow or defend the village from a raid?" Marriage was a peace treaty. It was a way to turn a scary neighboring tribe into your in-laws so they would stop throwing rocks at you. You were marrying a non-aggression pact. It stayed this way for thousands of years. From ancient Egypt to the Middle Ages, your wedding was less of a party and more of a board meeting. It was about stability and duty and making sure the human race didn't go extinct because everyone was too busy being a hermit. Let's look at a specific example, like ancient Rome. In Rome, marriage was so important for the state that they actually had laws punishing you if you stayed single for too long. If you were a bachelor past a certain age, you could be barred from receiving inheritances or attending public games. Imagine being told by the government that you can't watch the gladiators until you find a wife. It was high-stakes social engineering. They had 3 different types of marriage ranging from basically being owned by your husband to a more liberal version where the woman kept her own property. But in all cases, the goal was the same, producing legitimate citizens to keep the empire running. They didn't care if you were happy. They cared if you were tax compliant and reproductive. Then we get to the Middle Ages where things get even weirder. Most people think of knights and chivalry, but for the average stick peasant, marriage was basically a labor contract. You needed a partner because running a medieval farm by yourself was physically impossible. You needed someone to manage the dairy while you were in the fields and someone to weave the clothes while you were fixing the roof. It was a 2-person survival pod. Love was something you read about in poems by troubadours who lived in castles. For the rest of us, it was about making sure there was enough firewood to survive February. Then the Enlightenment happened, and people started getting weird ideas about individual happiness. In the late 1700s, we started seeing the rise of the novel and the idea that the heart should have a vote. We started thinking maybe we should actually like the person we wake up next to every morning. We transitioned from the institutional marriage to the companionate marriage. We stopped looking for a business partner and started looking for a best friend. This was a beautiful shift, but it also put a massive amount of pressure on our relationships. We went from expecting our spouse to provide half a field of wheat to expecting them to provide our entire emotional identity. This brings us to the Victorian era, where we started obsessing over the ritual of marriage. This is where the white dress and the giant cakes and the elaborate ceremonies became standard. We started decorating the cage as it were, but even then it was still deeply tied to social standing. A good match meant someone from the right class with the right connections. We were trying to blend the old world property merger with the new world romantic ideal, and the result was often a lot of repressed stick people drinking tea and being very polite while secretly being miserable. By the mid-20th century, we hit the peak of the nuclear family dream. The suburban house, the 2 kids, the white picket fence. We tried to make marriage the ultimate reward for a successful life. But because we had stripped away the village support and the tribal connections, We forced the couple to become a tiny island. This is where the modern crisis of loneliness starts. When the island is just two people, and those two people have an argument, there is nowhere else to go. The pressure becomes explosive. So what can we actually learn from those stick people in the past who were just trading goats? The first big lesson is the village. In the past, you had a whole community to support you. You didn't expect your husband to be your therapist because you had a village elder for that. You didn't expect your wife to be your only source of fun because you had a whole tribe to dance around a fire with. Today, we try to squeeze 100 different roles into one single person, and then we wonder why they look tired. The lesson is that you need to rebuild your village. Don't make your partner your only outlet for everything. Give them a break and go talk to a friend. If your partner is your only friend, your only lover, and your only coworker, you are basically setting up a single point of failure for your happiness. The second lesson is about the signal versus the hard wire. For ancestors, marriage was a hardwired contract. Even if they had a bad day or a bad year, they stayed because the contract was the reality of their survival. Today, we rely on the emotional signal. If the signal is strong, we are happy, but if the signal drops even a little bit, we start panicking that the relationship is broken. Our ancestors knew that feelings are like the weather, but a partnership is like the house. You don't tear down the house just because it's raining outside. You wait for the sun to come back, and you fix the roof together. Resilience isn't about never feeling bad. It's about knowing that the structure can withstand the storm. The third lesson is the value of shared labor. We've become very focused on self-actualization, which is a fancy way of saying we want to find ourselves. But our ancestors found themselves through what they did for others. They found meaning in the shared work of building a life. When you and your partner are working toward a goal together, whether that's raising kids, or starting a business, or just trying to figure out how to assemble a complicated piece of furniture, you are participating in the ancient tradition of the team. There is a deep biological satisfaction in knowing that someone has your back while you tackle a problem. Let's talk about the ghost of the goat. Even though we don't trade livestock for brides anymore, the psychological ghost of that transaction still haunts us. We still look for value in our partners. But instead of land, we look for status or looks or social media compatibility. We have to be careful not to turn our modern love back into a property merger just with different types of property. If you're only with someone because they make your life look better to others, you're just a Roman bachelor trying to get into the gladiator games. The final lesson is that marriage was never meant to be a destination where you live happily ever after in a vacuum. It was meant to be a partnership for a journey. Life is basically just a very long process of moving heavy boxes from one room to another. Our ancestors decided to get married because they realized that if two people hold the box, it's 50% layer. They weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for backup. Whether it's for land or for goats or for love, the core of the human experience hasn't changed. We are just a bunch of stick people trying to find someone else who is willing to help us carry the boxes until the screen goes white. So maybe go tell your partner thank you for helping with the boxes today. And if you don't have a partner yet, just remember that even the ancestors had to start by wandering around the woods for a while. It's all part of the process. You are the result of thousands of years of successful stick people making it work against impossible odds. You've got the DNA of survivors. Now go use it to be a better partner. Stay bonded, stay curious, and maybe buy a goat just in case. It's good for the lawn and it's great for the vibes. See you in the next era. If this video shifted something for you, hit the like button. It tells us no, this kind of content is worth making more of. Want to understand yourself, your life, and the world a little more deeply? Please subscribe. New videos drop regularly, and every single one is built to give you something real to take into your life. You deserve to know more. Don't forget to share. We'll see you in the next one.